So in that article, whatever it appears that we are doing with lot of compassion, sympathy, and all these things. And have you noted down what are the penalties, etc.? The factual part. Okay. So, हाँ वर्कबुक वाला बस क्या क्या फिल कराना है ठीक है. So we have not done that Indian part, but what I feel after citizenship we'll do that part, because lot of things related to citizenship will be coming. So external sovereign external aspects we have done. Internal Indian wala I will combine with sovereignty theory, citizenship theory. So have we done? Let us continue with the other basic concepts. So we finished with nation types. So now next concept which is used a lot is the concept of sovereignty. Okay. Sovereignty, anyone who doesn't know, anyone who is not from pol science. You are not from pol science, but I see you every day. You are also not from pol science. No, I see you in the class. No, I optional. Anyone who is non from pol science optional. Okay, fine. Because in political science we discuss sovereignty a lot, and sovereignty is very basic, very essential principle when we do constitution. For example, preamble will start with India as a sovereign, socialist, secular. So there can be question on how globalization is impacting sovereignty. There was a question. There can be question in prelims also. Fine. For example, they can ask you what is de facto, what is de jure, what is political sovereignty, what is popular sovereignty, what is legal sovereignty. So certain concepts related to sovereignty. And when do we discuss the concept of sovereignty? Sovereignty basically means what? In literal sense, sovereignty means supreme authority. So what is unique as far as the modern state is concerned? So modern state you should compare with medieval state. So suppose in prelims the question is that in medieval times state was sovereign. It is right or wrong? It is wrong. State was not considered as sovereign. And then if state was not sovereign, then which institution was sovereign? Church. This is also wrong. Suppose in prelims, second option is instead of state sovereign, church was sovereign. This is also wrong. Fine. Because it was not clear, okay, which institution is sovereign, which institution has ultimate authority. Fine. So medieval time was a age of confusion with respect to the question of sovereignty. Fine. And This confusion was not good. For what? Anything is for what? I said one word, ease of doing business. Fine. Because if you are not clear about the chain of command, you will be running from pillar to post and you will not be able to get your problems resolved. What is the best example of this confused idea of sovereignty? Delhi government. Fine. So in Delhi government, there have been two swords. Fine. LG and Chief Minister. You are not clear as a citizen, like if this is the problem, I have to go where? And this create a very chaotic situation. And it's not good for ease of doing business. For ease of doing business in a modern society, scholars like Max Weber has given the concept that in modern society you need organization, bureaucratic organization. What is the distinctive feature of bureaucracy? Hierarchy, system of laws, clarity is there, no confusion is there. Fine. So in prelims you may take it for granted that if a state is sovereign, then church is sovereign. But in medieval times, it was not at all clear. This was a confusion. And this confusion is expressed through the concept of theory of two swords. And it was also not clear as to, because there were multiple centers of authority, lot of lords, who is ultimate power, it is not clear. Fine. Now you are getting what I'm speaking. Fine. So sovereignty concept is always to be understood in the historical context. Fine. So when there are different centers, etc., there is a confusion. So what happened in modern times? Do you know that Gandhi was against the state? Was Gandhi also against Ram Rajya? Ram Rajya is not a state. It is a state. Fine. So is Gandhi against a state or Gandhi was against modern state? Modern state. So what is there in the modern state which Gandhi opposed? Centralization. Fine. And Gandhi is a supporter of what? Decentralization. Fine. So what is a distinctive feature of the modern state? Modern state represent centralized authority. Okay. So authority got centralized. So in medieval time, what we see, king is supreme or pope is supreme, not clear. Who is supreme here? Not clear. So ultimately, this confusion was ended and it was decided that ultimate powers will lie with the king. So what is happening? Centralization of powers. Okay. And one authority. So in India, modernity came when British came. So Britishers ended very fragmented, decentralized system of law, and Britishers introduced a centralized, heavily centralized system of administration. And Gandhi, as a critic of a British state, Gandhi will oppose centralization and Gandhi will talk about decentralization. And Gandhi will, in his struggle against British, Gandhi would also make it a point to show that Indian traditions were good. So what was Indian tradition? Panchayati Raj, decentralization. Fine. Who opposed Gandhi's Panchayati Raj? Ambedkar. Because Ambedkar is not supporting Indian tradition. Ambedkar is modernist. So if you will remember a concept in the form of some story, many things will become automatically clear. Is that clear? So concept of sovereignty means supreme authority. Write one question. ऐसे लिखो, which of the following statements single statement is correct? Statement is correct. A. Right. In medieval times, church had supreme power. Second, in medieval times, authority of king was absolute. Absolute. Next, modern state is a centralized entity. Next, Gandhi was against all forms of state. Is the last statement correct? No. Cut it. Gandhi is against modern state. कौन कौन से सही है statement? First statement is wrong, but you know why it is wrong. Why? Theory of two swords. Why पे ज्यादा जाना है. Why के बिना judgment नहीं ले सकते हैं. ठीक है. तो you have your answer. Okay. मान लो अगर हम if we would have not linked with why, what options you would have chosen wrong? है या लास्ट वाला. तो इसलिए यू नीड थिंकिंग एंड देन डोंट टेक राइट, डोंट वर्क ऑन एजम्पशंस. ओके. अब नेक्स्ट लिखो, व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ अथॉरिटी? अथॉरिटी मीन्स व्हाट? लिखो, फॉर्मुलेशन ऑफ लॉ. ठीक है. अब लिखो, व्हाट इज लॉ या व्हाट इज अ कैरेक्टरिस्टिक ऑफ लॉ? या हम पूछ सकते हैं, व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ लॉ? So law is to regulate the behavior. Law is to regulate the behavior. What is the purpose of law? Order. Order, yeah. What disturbs the order? Unlimited liberty. What is the purpose of law? To restrain liberty. Right. The purpose of law is to limit the liberty. ठीक है. अब लिखो, for example, the purpose of criminal law is to limit the liberty. Is this correct statement? Yes. Limit liberty means if criminal law is there, you don't have a liberty to kill other person, you don't have a liberty to slap other person. Fine. So purpose of law is to limit liberty. Keep it very simple. There was so much confusion when UPSC has asked this simple question, the relationship between law and liberty. Fine. So no law, no liberty. It's a simple question. Fine. So in GS, you don't have to move into philosophy, no negative liberty, positive liberty, until and unless they are not mentioning positive, negative liberty, you take in a simplistic, original meaning. So law is to restrain liberty. That is the purpose of law. Fine. And sovereignty. Sovereignty is authority. Authority means power to make law. So, and what else is a characteristic of law? Law means it comes with power of enforcement. Anything which cannot be enforced is not law. So, is international law? Namesake, because it cannot be enforced. This is a characteristic of law. Fine. So now we will see traditions of law. ऐसे लिखो अपनी कॉपी में, traditions of law. Or types of laws. So the oldest system is customary law. Often we use customary law and religious law interchangeably. Fine. So, what is Muslim personal law? Customary, and the source is Shariat or religious code. Hindu personal law, but source was customs which have been codified. Fine. So, one is a customary law and the religious law, and number of times it is codified, it may not be codified. So I think the Shariat is a codification of the law. So in different religions there can be different practice, but here custom is a source of law. Okay. Next is called as natural law and positive law. Fine. Positive law is also, just remember this word, legal positivism. We will use it in fundamental rights. Legal positivism. So which law is called positive law? Fine. A law which is in the welfare of the people, a law which is which is there to prevent the oppression, a law given by the state, or all of the above. Huh? So all positive doesn't mean good. Fine. Positive means which is codified, which is written. In Hindi, it is called pratyaksh. Fine. Something which can be seen. So normally, positivism term is used for a state made law. Normally, a state law is codified. ऐसे बेसिक डिफरेंस होना चाहिए. सिस्टम क्या है? बिकॉज वी आर फॉलोइंग द ब्रिटिश सिस्टम प्राइमरीली थियोरी में. इफ यू सी द इस्लामिक सिस्टम, then even customary law is codified. Okay, but otherwise we call it as a state made law, is called positivism. And what is the source of natural law? Reason. If you say natural law, the source of natural law is nature, it doesn't define anything. The source of natural law is reason. Fine. So if you see Islamic practices, then in Islamic practices, state and religion is not separated. Fine. These two things are very closely intertwined. Fine. Whereas if you see modern Western states, there is a separation between all these. And that is why one major, you can say, opposition, major conflict is between the Western and the Islamic tradition. Okay. And among the countries, positive law tradition, it is continental tradition, British tradition hai. You can also call it, in fact, more than British. If you call it French tradition, Napoleonic codes, Napoleonic code, written definite system. And अगर हम Western world में, even British law, custom is a source, convention is a source. Their constitution itself is based on convention, and natural law tradition is prominent in USA. So USA follows the tradition of natural law or reason. Okay. Now, which is better? This, or this? Which is better if it is related to criminal law? Positive law. Fine. Because definiteness is there. It is better because maybe customs may become outdated. So state can reform the customs. And what else? Why do you think state-made law is better rather than this law? No, the correct issue is, this is very subjective, ambiguous, and this can vary from judge to judge. And in criminal law, these type of ambiguity should not be there. There should be clarity. Fine. So as far as criminal laws are concerned, state's main purpose is to punish those who are criminals. Fine. And law is again defined by state, and state has a power to punish the criminals. And the best approach to the criminal law is the positive law. Fine. Not the natural law. Fine. So if I talk, you know about Article 21. Article 21 deals with criminal law. Am I right or wrong? Not. No. तुम लोग वो जो आंसर बताएं बस वो बताओ. नेचुरल लॉ मैंने पूछा. आर्टिकल 21. देखो आर्टिकल 20, 21 एंड आर्टिकल 22 ये सब किससे रिलेटेड है? ये सब रिलेटेड हैं क्रिमिनल जस्टिस सिस्टम से. ठीक है. और इसमें प्रोटेक्शन हो रहा है किसका? लिबर्टी का. फ्रॉम आर्बिट्रेरी अरेस्ट, डिटेंशन एक्सेट्रा. ठीक है. तो ये क्रिमिनल लॉ में स्टेट को रेस्ट्रिक्ट किया जा रहा है कि स्टेट ऐसे ऐसे नहीं करेगी. Whenever Article 20, 21, 22 come, then police and judiciary comes into picture. Fine. तो यहाँ पे पुलिस आ रही है ना पिक्चर में. 19 में आ रही है पुलिस? नहीं. तो ये क्रिमिनल लॉ से लिंक्ड कॉन्सेप्ट है. और 21 एंड 22 तो इंटरलिंक्ड है. तो यहाँ पर टर्म क्या यूज किया गया था कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में? प्रोसीजर एस्टैब्लिश्ड बाय लॉ. ये कौन सा लॉ था? पॉजिटिव लॉ, स्टेट मेड लॉ. एंड ओरिजिनली देयर वाज, कुछ लिखो नहीं ऐसे तो फंडामेंटल राइट्स में हम डिस्कस करेंगे, ऐसे दिमाग में रखो बस. तो ओरिजिनल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन in Article 21 was not carrying the idea of natural law. So natural law, because it is ambiguous, it is subjective, it is uncertain. Okay. So initial cases, judiciary did not accept that this should contain natural law. But later on, in Menka Gandhi case, judiciary incorporated it. Fine. So can we call that act of judiciary as judicial activism? Fine. So judiciary not, judiciary going away from what Constituent Assembly actually mandated for. Okay. So topic wise we'll do, but the concept of law has to do originally with the concept of limiting the liberty. And law, criminal law, it should be definite, it should be certain, it should not be subjective, and that is why that positive tradition is better. Okay. Now let us see types of sovereignty. Types of sovereignty. वो तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पे डिफाइन होगा. रिलीजियस लॉज तो ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटी की बातें हैं. मॉडर्न सोसाइटी में there is no role of religious law. So if I say in modern society like US, is there religion specific laws, personal laws? No. So in modern societies it is not there.
तो मैम नेचुरल लॉज की जो एनफोर्समेंट की पावर है वो भी स्टेट के पास ही हुई?
पावर ऑफ एनफोर्समेंट तो स्टेट ही के पास है. स्टेट ही तो सॉवरेन है. स्टेट इज सॉवरेन. If not a state, then international. तो international में तो it is not about sovereignty, it is about power. So every law will be enforced by the state only. Muslim personal law. You go to the court itself, na? You don't go to the Shariat court. Shariat court verdict will not, you can appeal against that. So even for Muslim personal law, you go to the Supreme Court, you go to the High Court. So state is supreme. That is a principle in modern states. And state's power is absolute. And a state will have ultimate power to punish. So law will come with power of punishment and all. ठीक है? तो वो सब तो that is like moral policing है. That moral policing is different. Fine. So now let us come to types of sovereignty. So you know that, so you just write first of all internal. Internal sovereignty means no other association within the state can claim supremacy over the state. ठीक है? So there can be autonomous institutions like UGC, etc., where a state prefers not to interfere. But it doesn't mean state cannot interfere. There is no limit to the sovereignty of the state. For example, new regulations by the state with respect to appointment of vice chancellors. You can't oppose that. State cannot do, state can do anything because state is absolute authority. And the only restrictions on the powers of the state is which is given in the constitution. Fine. So if constitution puts any limitations, only that is the limitation. Rest, whatever state want, it can do. And the only way a state can be held accountable is through elections or through judiciary. Judiciary is for accountability during elections, and election is the final accountability. So modern state is absolute. Is this statement correct? Correct statement. Is that clear? So internal sovereignty. Now, next is external sovereignty. External sovereignty simply means primacy of municipal law over international law. So it is up to India. It accepts refugee convention. It doesn't accept refugee convention. It cannot be compelled. It cannot be forced. If country wants to come out of NPT, it can come. Fine. So this is internal and external sovereignty. Now there is another type, de facto and de jure. First write de jure. Jure, jure means legally speaking. Or by law. By law. And de facto means in practice. Is this point clear? अब एक सेंटेंस सुनो और बताओ सही की गलत. ठीक है? सेंटेंस ये है, इन इंडिया president is having de jure authority and prime minister is having de facto. Correct? Absolutely wrong. Why you are calling it correct? Because this is how it is given in Lakshmikant. Right? President's authority is by law and Prime Minister's authority is also by law. Instead of, now hear this statement and tell me right or wrong. In India, President is a nominal head, whereas Prime Minister is a real head. नहीं, ये तो सही ही है. Nominal and de jure is not same. Is that clear? This statement is correct. President is a nominal head and Prime Minister is the real executive. Nominal head means the actions, executive actions are in the name of President. So, nominal head. He is nominal head, that is why he is not held accountable. Article 361. ठीक है, but it doesn't tell it is de jure. Have you understood this? So de jure, de facto. De jure means Prime Minister's authority in India is de facto or de facto only. Is it is de facto? Can't say. Fine, because if let us say a scenario where Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister, then was he a de facto Prime Minister? Who was de facto? Sonia Gandhi. Fine. So you can't confuse these terms. Fine. Nominal. Opposite of nominal is real. Opposite of de jure is de facto. Fine. So army in Pakistan, de jure or de facto? De facto. Now tell me, army in Myanmar, de jure and de facto both. कोई भी आंसर तुरंत नहीं देना है बिना सोचे समझे. Different situations may be existing in different countries. ठीक है, तो de jure means whether authority is legal or not, and de facto. Fine. तो मान लो कोई भैया है, कालीन भैया. फाइन. तो कालीन भैया की अथॉरिटी चलती है कि नहीं? कौन सी है, डी जुरे की डी फैक्टो? डी फैक्टो. लेकिन कलेक्टर डी जुरे डी फैक्टो पता नहीं, अगर कालीन भैया के यहाँ है तो डिस्ट्रिक्ट में तो नहीं भी हो सकती है. यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग दिस? तो भाई डी फैक्टो के आगे कालीन भैया लिख सके कर सकते हो, है ना? तो चलो डी जुरे तो लिख लिया. डी जुरे का एग्जाम्पल लिख लो, अथॉरिटी ऑफ कलेक्टर. और डी फैक्टो कालीन भैया. क्या दिक्कत? अब इसके कॉम्बिनेशन हो सकते हैं. भाई यहाँ की सरकार हम हैं ऐसे, वो तो वो बोल सकते हैं ना. इज दैट क्लियर? चलो नेक्स्ट. So there is nothing called nominal and real sovereignty. Sovereignty is sovereignty. Nothing called nominal and real. And nominal is not de jure. Is this point clear? Fine. So sometimes in exam they can ask you to match the column, etc. Fine. So just understand the term legal sovereignty, political sovereignty, and popular sovereignty. Fine. So what does these terms denote? Legal sovereignty means ultimate power to make law. in whose law will prevail? Legal sovereignty will answer this question. Fine. So ऐसे लिखो, the concept of legal sovereignty is to answer the question which law will prevail. In modern political systems, legal sovereignty lies with state. If I talk about Sabrimala case, fine. So whose authority will prevail? The state or that trust? State. यही बता रहे हैं. Legal sovereignty is a term to find out. Now, political sovereignty is not very important for us. Political sovereignty means who exercise political power, means who will be making the law. ठीक है? So political sovereignty tells who makes the law, who has power to make law. So basically the party with majority. Next is popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is a fiction. Fiction है, assumption है. Fiction है, ये एक सोच है. ठीक है. It is a aspiration. It does not happen. You will not find popular sovereignty. It is an aspiration. It is a fiction. Fine. And it is a philosophical idea. Philosophical means abstract. So if I tell you, bring the legal sovereign in the class, you can do. Bring the political, you can do. Bring the philosophical, you can't point it out. So it's a philosophical idea. It is an abstract idea, right? This idea gained, ऐसे लिखो, this idea gained primacy during French Revolution. Right? It was to justify the revolution. Revolution means act of the people to change the system. उनकी जो एंशियन रेजिम उसको बदल दिया, किंग को गिलोटिन कर दिया. तो इन एक्शन को जस्टिफाई करने के लिए पॉपुलर सॉवरेनिटी एज अ कॉन्सेप्ट है. तो पॉपुलर सॉवरेनिटी रिप्लेसेस द आइडिया ऑफ डिवाइन राइट्स and it says that ultimate power lies with the people and voice of the people is voice of God. Okay. So in India, we see all the three forms: legal sovereignty, which is associated by Hobbes. Political sovereignty means parliamentary sovereignty. Fine. And popular sovereignty. Fine. So constitution reflects पॉपुलर एंड लीगल. ठीक है, लीगल सभी है, लेकिन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन रिफ्लेक्ट पॉपुलर सोवरेनिटी एंड पार्लियामेंट रिफ्लेक्ट्स पॉलिटिकल सोवरेनिटी. कैन दे बी इक्वेटेड? नो. फाइन. कैन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ द डे बी गिवन absolute power to change the constitution completely? No, because government only represent political sovereignty, fine, not popular sovereignty. Okay, so it will come on the basis of which doctrine of basic structure will emerge. Okay, so now let us understand democracy. Democracy. So demo means people. Democracy, demo means people. Cracy means form of government. What is democracy? Means you are giving where there is a participation of government, participation of the people. Fine. Now write types. First is direct democracy. Is there anything like indirect democracy? No. There is indirect election. लेकिन किताबों में लिखा रहता है कॉन्फिडेंस के साथ इनडायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी. ठीक है. डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी का अपोजिट इनडायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है. डायरेक्ट का अपोजिट रिप्रेजेंटेटिव है. ठीक है. इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन होता है. ओके. तो डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी मीन्स डायरेक्ट पार्टिसिपेशन. Direct participation. Direct participation means no middleman. No middleman means no delegate. No delegate. You are not delegating. ठीक है. Next paragraph लिखो. Opposite of direct democracy is representative. So somebody comes in the middle. Representative. ठीक है. Means people are participating through their delegates or representatives. नेक्स्ट लिखो ऐसे क्वेश्चन लिखो. व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन प्रोसीजरल एंड सब्सटैंटिव डेमोक्रेसीज? And where will you put Indian democracy? So procedural means process oriented. Process oriented. For example, free and fair elections. Is India procedural democracy? We have free and fair elections. Huh? What Supreme Court tells, what is there some tussle going on? Fine. So procedural, free and fair elections, judicial independence, rule of law, procedure पे आप ज्यादा फोकस करते हैं. And substantive means outcome oriented. Outcome से याद रखिए भाई, means नहीं, ends. Procedural means हो गया और ये क्या हो गया, ends. Substantive को बिल्कुल ends. End क्या है डेमोक्रेसी का? Empowerment. Empowerment of the people. So are we becoming more and more empowered or disempowered? डिसएम्पावर्ड मासेस। तो सब्सटैंटिव नहीं है। सब्सटैंटिव अगर कभी कंफ्यूजन हो तो सिंपल याद रखो, या तो आउटकम या यू कैन से रियलाइजेशन फोकस्ड, रियलाइजेशन फोकस्ड अप्रोच। रियलाइजेशन लगे डेमोक्रेसी है, इमोशनल कॉन्सेप्ट है, मेंटल साइकोलॉजिकल कॉन्सेप्ट है, रियलाइजेशन फोकस्ड। ऐसा लगे तुम्हारा एमपी है, घर जाके तुम बात कर सकते हो और एमपी बोलेगा आगे पॉपुलर सॉवरेनिटी, बैठिए मेरी कुर्सी पर। ठीक है, ठीक है। तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं होने वाला। Fine. वो बताएंगे प्रीलिम, वो उसमें बताएंगे फंडामेंटल राइट्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, फिर बहुत लंबा पहुंच जाएगा है क्या। सब्सटैंटिव मतलब आउटकम ओरिएंटेड। रियलाइज, सब्सटैंटिव शब्द अमर्त्य सेन यूज करते रहते हैं, मतलब रियलाइजेशन फोकस्ड। यू शुड फील देयर इज डेमोक्रेसी, you should feel that you can criticize government, you can feel this। पावर लेस फीलिंग आती है आपको कि पावर एम्पावर्ड फीलिंग आती? आपको क्या लगता है कि सिस्टम के आगे हम पावरलेस हैं या एम्पावर्ड हैं? पावरलेस हैं, तो सब्सटेंटिव नहीं है। फाइन। तो पहले ऐसा कहा जाता था that India's democracy is procedural but not substantive. But now there is a question mark even on procedural democracy. Fine. If you have instances where so much money is found in the house of judge and all, then obviously it is putting big question mark. ठीक है, ये काट देना भैया। कह दो हट या निकाल देना ऐसे। चलो फाइन। तो प्रीलिम्स में सब कभी कभी यूडीएचआर से क्वेश्चन आते हैं। फाइन। तो ये एक ऐसे लिख सकते हैं, डेमोक्रेसी इज अ पार्ट, इस पहले समझ लो, मतलब इट इज गिवन इन यूनिवर्सल डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स। फाइन। सो आर्टिकल 21 of UDHR talks about everyone has right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representative। ठीक है, तो ये प्रीलिम्स में क्वेश्चन आ सकता है। तो ऐसे क्वेश्चन लिख लो, लिखो वेदर UDHR incorporates right to participate in government either directly or indirectly। Is democracy a human right? Answer is yes। और इसका सोर्स क्या है? आर्टिकल 21 ऑफ यूडीएचआर। It shows that democracy is a human right। ऐसा कोई है जिसे कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा? चल ठीक है, डेमोक्रेसी ह्यूमन राइट। अब एक ऐसे क्वेश्चन लिखो, असर्शन लिखो, लिखो डेमोक्रेसी इज अ ह्यूमन राइट, असर्शन लिखो। ए असर्शन रीजनिंग के क्वेश्चन देखे हैं? तो ए लिखो डेमोक्रेसी इज अ ह्यूमन राइट। रीजन लिखो, आर लिखो, it should be a universal system means it should be in all countries. Is the reason correct? Yes. Human rights का मतलब क्या है? Universal Declaration of Human Rights. डेमोक्रेसी, ह्यूमन राइट की थियोरी ये कहती है कि सबको मिलना चाहिए। तो जब सबको मिलना चाहिए यानी डेमोक्रेसी का भी यूनिवर्सलाइजेशन है, और डेमोक्रेसी एंड ह्यूमन राइट्स इंटरलिंक्ड कॉन्सेप्ट है। डेमोक्रेसी में ही तो राइट्स होते हैं। यूडीएचआर का पर्पस ही है एक्सपेंशन ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी। सपोज अ कंट्री इज नॉट डेमोक्रेटिक, कैन इट हैव राइट्स? नो ना, राइट? चलो, सो you understand oligarchy and all, not so important. Theocracy. Now these terms, left, right and center. ऐसे लिखो, left, जो कमरा छोड़ के चला जाए वो लेफ्ट है। लेफ्ट मीन्स, ऐसे लेफ्ट पहले समझना है। दिस टर्म लेफ्ट एंड राइट is from French Revolution. Fine. So people sitting in the left of the king were the third estate who were looking for change, and right were the nobility and clergy who were against change. So right is against change. Against change means conservative. Left is for the change. So left means socialist, radical word के लिए left आता है। अब असलियत में भी ये हुआ था, when a state general was called, means a common assembly was called, and in this assembly third estate left. ये वैसे भी चले गए छोड़ के क्योंकि इनकी बात मानी नहीं जा रही थी। और सेंटर में कौन था? किंग था। ठीक है, तो सेंटर में किंग का मतलब क्या है कि यू आर गोइंग फॉर मिडिल पाथ। सो इन फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन, आफ्टर दोज हु वेयर लेफ्टिस्ट, दे वांटेड टू एबॉलिश मोनार्की. Those who were rightists, they wanted to continue monarchy. Those who were centrists, they wanted monarchy, but like Britain, curb its powers. So going for middle path. So this is how these terms have come. ठीक है, तो left means what? Progressive. Right means reactionary. And center means middle path. अभी liberal parties के लिए center word use होता है. Okay? Now come to types of constitutions. Write this question. What is the fundamental difference between written and unwritten constitution? इसी के साथ एक और क्वेश्चन लिखो. देखो, कैन एंड या वेदर एनी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इज entirely written or entirely unwritten? Can any constitution be entirely written or unwritten? Answer is no. British constitution has written parts. Fine. So then how will you differentiate? But no constitution is entirely codified. No is entirely uncodified. ठीक है, तो डिफरेंस कैसे करते हैं? डिफरेंस लिखो. पहला, ये सेकंड क्वेश्चन का तो आंसर पता है आपको. ठीक है, उसी से बताना था कि कम से कम वो आंसर नहीं था. ठीक है, तो लिखो राइट। जैसे वाई डू वी कॉल ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अनरिटन इवन व्हेन इट डज हैव रिटन पार्ट्स? बिकॉज इट इज स्कैटर्ड। फाइन, तो मेन थिंग इज why American Constitution and Indian Constitution is written. So written constitutions are those where Constituent Assembly is called. Fine. So when Constituent Assembly is called, which produces a document, it is called written. Otherwise, the documents which are not by this procedure, this is unwritten. आ गया समझ में? नथिंग इज एंटायरली रिटन और अनरिटन। तो इसका डिफरेंस क्या हो गया? ठीक है, तो ऐसे लिखो राइट, अनरिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस आर दोज which are scattered in the sense not produced by the special convention, not produced by the special convention. Special convention means Constituent Assembly. लिखो, for example, British Constitution is called unwritten because Constituent Assembly was never called. ये टेक्निकल डिफरेंस है, बाकी नहीं। अब है, ऐसे लिखो, डिफरेंस इन रिजिड एंड फ्लेक्सिबल। Right, if constitutions can be amended easily, it is called flexible. For example, British Constitution is most flexible. Underline करो, most flexible means it can be amended by simple majority. Simple majority means majority of the members present and voting. Majority of the members present and voting. Suppose the quorum of House of Commons is 20 members. Fine. Then 10 members can amend the British Constitution. So it is most flexible constitution. ठीक है? Rigid constitution. Rigid constitution means which require special procedure. For example, US Constitution. It is extremely rigid, and up till now, I think only 27 amendments have happened. And in India, 110 में तो हो ही चुके होंगे। ठीक है, तो और गैप देखो, means in 75 years we had so many constitution. in US, even in like 1789 से लेके अब तक 27 constitution, because it has a rigid procedure. It has a rigid majority. You have to call a convention, then you have to ratify it. Okay. So rigid. And अब लिखो what about India? What about India? लिखो India is a mix of rigid and flexible. लिखो some parts can be amended by simple majority. Example, fifth schedule, provisions of sixth schedule, formation of new states, creation and abolition of legislative councils, अब एक क्वेश्चन लिखो, should constitutions be rigid or flexible? Should constitution be rigid or flexible? Which is better? Nothing depends. Depend क्या होता है? Like India ये हाँ? Constitution should be flexible or rigid? Both वाले लोग मुझे पसंद नहीं. You should take position. No, rigid. The purpose of having the constitution is to make it rigid. Outdated laws then don't have written constitutions. Fine. So the doctrine of basic structure, it strengthens the, or it favors rigidity or flexibility. Rigidity. ठीक है, इसी से लगाना चाहिए कि good thing is there should be rigidity. Fine, but there should also be flexibility. But in case you have to choose, the constitutions are supposed to be rigid, because if rigidity is not there, then there is no point having the basic document. Is this clear? So rigid or flexible, right? Because ordinarily constitutions should be rigid. Should be rigid. Otherwise, there is no point having the constitution. Means ऐसे लिखो, constitutions cannot be subjected to the will of political majority. Political majority. Yeah, it cannot be plaything of political majority. Means there has to be something in the constitution which has to be respected. So you can't allow constitution to become the plaything, because then the very idea of having constitution is questionable. Why do you have constitutions? So I said, as a rule, constitutions should have rigidity. Fine. Because you can't allow constitutions to become plaything in the hands of political majority. Anybody able to get absolute majority in the both the houses doesn't mean they can change the constitution. Is that clear? Because if this happens, it goes against the idea of constitutionalism. The very reason constitution exists is to limit the powers of the state, rule of law. So how can you allow government to have limitless power to change the constitution? आ गया समझ में? Yes. Evolve with the, you evolve but you don't revolve. रिवॉल्व मत करो हाथ में लेके कि हाँ मेरे हाथ का खिलौना है ये ले लिया. इवॉल्व करो, रिवॉल्व ना करो. ठीक है. हाँ नहीं ना ऐसे. ये है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और मतलब अपना रिवॉल्व करते गए. इवॉल्व करो. हम इवॉल्व कैसे करें? रिवॉल्व इज डिफरेंट. ठीक है, दोनों में अलग चीज है. तुम क्या पूछ रहे थे? will of the people, but for what? Will of the people, if in the elections you have taken the mandate that this vote will also mean that we will be setting up a constituent assembly or we will be constituent assembly. So will of the people, if there is no mandate taken to revolve the constitution, ठीक है, तो how can you say so? So will of the people for what? Have you taken this consent? Fine. So that's why all written constitutions, they have the rigid procedures of the amendment. Technically it has to be rigid. ठीक है. Logic क्या है? Because if majority government is allowed to play with the constitution, then the idea of constitutionalism is irrelevant. Constitutionalism assumes the rigidity. Constitutionalism assumes that there are restrictions. अब तो समझ में आया? ऐसे लिखो, why constitutions should be rigid. इसका आंसर लिखो, because constitutions are written not with ink but with blood. हम थोड़ा की तो उम्मीद हमेशा रहती है, लेकिन कभी भी 100% तो कुछ नहीं होता है. टिल्ट किधर है? इन प्रिंसिपल क्या सही होता है? कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस हैव टू बी रिजिड. ठीक है. अब इसका मतलब क्या है? देयर इज अ लिमिट टू विच गवर्नमेंट्स कैन अमेंड द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. ठीक है. एंड दैट इज वाई written constitutions have which procedure? Judicial review. Judicial review ensures, judicial review show that ensures the rigidity of the constitution. जहां भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन होगा वहां कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म होगा. और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म का who is the which institution is a guardian of the constitution? Judiciary. How judiciary guards? Through judicial review. Fine. So the very fact written countries with written constitution have judicial review show that constitutions ought to be rigid. and should not be changed in the way. There cannot be conspiracy against the constitution. You can change the constitution altogether, but for that you have to call the constituent assembly. But making the constitutions is not so easy task. It results into bloodbath. So that is why, are you ready to pay the blood? You see Indian constitution or any constitution, formation of India, partition, bloodbath, you start changing the constitution, there can be complete disorder, chaos. So you have to take constitutions seriously. It cannot be a plaything in the hands of the majority. So why constitutions should be rigid? Because they are not written with ink. ठीक है, इंक सस्ती है, खून महंगा है, ठीक है, तो ये बहुत महंगे का सौदा करने लग जाओगे. This will change. You understand why this doctrine of basic structure etc are gaining legitimacy. ठीक है, अब एक क्वेश्चन लिखो. India also says goes for rigid. Indian constitutional provision is tilted towards rigidity or flexibility. Rigidity, because there are few provisions where constitution can change ordinarily, because these were few questions which could not be solved at that point of time, and constitution provides a proper rigid procedure under article 368. कोई written constitution हो और वो rigid ना हो तो मतलब ही नहीं ना फिर. ठीक है, in that is what is expected. That is why that Gram Sabha has been introduced. No, so the rules, parliamentary rules, should be ultimately be decided in Gram Sabha only. Then you will have popular sovereignty. वो तो आइडियल सिनेरियो है, लेकिन वो आइडियल होने थोड़ी दिया जाएगा. Real democracy is direct democracy only, and Gram Sabha is a very important institution, but it is not allowed to function. आपने पावर कहाँ दी? वो तो एक क्रिटिसिज्म है 73rd अमेंडमेंट का. फाइन, तो एक क्वेश्चन लिखो. ए लिखो, रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन असर्शन लिखो. हाँ, जिस रीजनिंग की तो तुम लोग को कमी है. ठीक है, असर्शन लिखो, इसी को तो हम प्रैक्टिस करवा रहे हैं. चलो असर्शन लिखो. ए, रिटन constitutions are supposed to be rigid. तुम लोग अपनी थ्योरी लगाओगे, नो नो इट शुड बी वेरी फ्लेक्सिबल, है ना? क्या सही है कि गलत है? आर सपोज टू बी रिजिड. रीजन लिखो. राइट, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म इज the rationale behind having a written constitution. Constitutionalism is a rationale behind having a written constitution. क्या लिंक है दोनों में? है ना? कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म का मतलब क्या होता है? रूल ऑफ लॉ, लिमिटिंग द पावर्स. So ordinarily constitutions are supposed to be, should be rigid. Now, types of constitutions में unitary, federal, confederal. ऐसे लिखो, types of constitution में types of constitution when here means how state structure is organized, या how governance structure is organized. So either it can be organized in the unitary form or confederal or federal. अब एक क्वेश्चन लिखो, लिखो whether sub-national governments सब-national का ब्रैकेट में लिखो provincial and local, ठीक है। तो फिर से बोले whether sub-national governments exist in unitary system। अब जल्दी से बिना सोचे समझे आंसर दो। हाँ, whether sub-national governments exist in unitary system? Yeah, it can. Right? Yes, it can exist. Why not? China is what? Unitary or federal? Unitary. So China has na Tibetan autonomous region. Fine. Britain has Scottish Parliament. Britain has Welsh Parliament. ठीक है, तो वो एग्जिस्ट करता है। ठीक है, सब नेशनल गवर्नमेंट्स हैव टू एग्जिस्ट, दे एग्जिस्ट एवरीवेयर। ठीक है, तो अब लिखो हाउ टू डिस्टिंग्विश, देन हाउ टू डिस्टिंग्विश बिटवीन unitary and federal। ठीक है, अब अंडरलाइन करो फेडरल। फेडरल का क्या मतलब होता है? यूनिटरी एंड फेडरल। देखो फेडरल मींस डुअल गवर्नमेंट। डुअल गवर्नमेंट, डुअल गवर्नमेंट का मतलब हो गया है डुअल, या इंडिया का 3 टायर भी है, बट हम डुअल में चलते हैं। डुअल गवर्नमेंट मींस 2 different set of governments। ठीक है, मीन्स बोथ deriving their या both possessing original powers। ओरिजिनल पावर्स मीन्स, फर्स्ट लिखो ओरिजिनल पावर्स का एक तो मतलब हो गया वेयर सोर्स ऑफ पावर इज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन इंडिया, if power oblique jurisdiction of union government is based on 7th schedule, same is the source of power of state governments। एक क्वेश्चन लिखो, देखो वेदर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स इन फेडरल सिस्टम are subordinate to union government? Are they subordinate? Answer is no. लिखो both have ultimate power in their domain. इंडिया की बात नहीं की जा रही क्योंकि इंडिया का फेडरेशन वैसा नहीं है, लेकिन थियोरिटिकली आपको समझना पड़ेगा. लेकिन फिर भी जो हमारी पार है वो सोर्स ओरिजिनल है. इज दैट क्लियर? सो द सेम डॉक्यूमेंट which is the source of power of central government, same document is a source of power of state governments. Fine. Just like the same constitution which gives what? The same constitution which gives power, yeah, rights to men also give rights to women. Rights to majority gives rights to minority. Some of the rights to citizens, some of the rights to non-citizens. So it is not that anybody is doing any favor or superior or subordinate. That is the essence of federalism. Fine. So in federalism, the powers of sub-national governments are original. Original means they are coming from the constitution. ठीक है. Now other meaning of original. Okay, एक और लिखो. राइट, लिखो original also means which is not delegated. डेलीगेटेड नहीं है, ओरिजिनल है. ठीक है, तो अब ऐसे लिखो, इन फेडरेशंस सब नेशनल गवर्नमेंट्स enjoy original powers rather than delegated or devolved powers. Delegated or devolved powers. तो डिफरेंस क्या है? डेलीगेटेड वर्सेस डिवॉल्व्ड. डेलीगेटेड हो गया एग्जीक्यूटिव एक्ट. मान लो कैबिनेट रेजोल्यूशन से कुछ बन गया. ठीक है. एंड डिवॉल्व्ड इज अ लेजिस्लेटिव एक्ट. So parliament can devolve powers. Devolution of powers versus delegation of powers. Can you understand the difference? Where is more security and guarantee? Devolution is better from the perspective of the subnational governments than delegation. Is that clear? So federalism is what? Delegation or devolution? Devolution. See the definition. यही तो था इसी लाइन में. They have original powers, neither delegated nor devolved. तो फेडरलिज्म में क्या आ रहा है, इसमें से कुछ आ रहा है? तो क्यों बता रहे थे, 1 सेकंड पहले की बातें भूल जाते हो। फेडरलिज्म इज नॉट डिवोल्यूशन। हैव यू अंडरस्टूड दिस? तो अब लिखो एक क्वेश्चन, देखो, इफ फेडरलिज्म इज नॉट डिवोल्यूशन देन व्हाट इज इट? नहीं है ना, अभी बता रहे हैं तुम्हें, हमको पता था इसलिए तो क्वेश्चन हमने पूछा। क्या हमने क्वेश्चन पूछा? इफ फेडरलिज्म इज नॉट डिवोल्यूशन देन व्हाट इज इट? तो इसका आंसर है फेडरलिज्म इज डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन। फेडरलिज्म और डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन एक ही चीज है। अब इसमें भी कंफ्यूज हो गए। डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन means no center, center is decentered, center is not there, means whether it is a state or union, both are deriving powers from the constitution. It's not that union is center or anything. तो फेडरलिज्म का मतलब क्या हुआ? डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन। डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन मीन्स देर इज नो हायरार्की, there is no center, no hierarchy. What Gandhi wanted? Decentralization. ठीक है, तो अगर यूनियन गवर्नमेंट कैन गिव, कैन डेलीगेट पावर्स, union government can devolve powers, so there is a hierarchy, there is a center, but in decentralization there is no center. ठीक है, means the states get the power from constitution. Is federalism and decentralization same? Fine. And delegation and devolution it assumes the authority of the union. Union is giving, there is somebody who is to give. Fine. So it is decentralized. अब एक क्वेश्चन लिखो, whether 73rd and 74th amendments introduce the third tier of federation. ठीक है, एक और क्वेश्चन लिखो, वेदर देर इज अ जेन्युइन सेंट्रलाइजेशन, डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन और फेडरलाइजेशन। जेन्युइन तो वैसे इंडिया में नहीं होगा। ठीक है, तो अब इसमें कह सकते हैं कि इट इज हाफ बेक्ड, ऐसे लिखो, इट इज हाफ हार्टेड मेजर, हाफ हार्टेड मेजर है ये। और नो रियल डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन, नो रियल डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन। ठीक है, अब देखो डायमेंशंस ऑफ डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन। political, legislative, administrative, fiscal. ठीक है, तो is the fiscal decentralization with panchayats? No, they don't have any independent powers, and whatever devolved powers, that was also taken away by GST. Fine. Is there any administrative decentralization? In some states like Kerala it may be, but hardly, because there is no decentralization, because they don't have their own independent cadre. Legislative, do we have anything like 7th schedule for panchayats? No. Fine, we have 11th and 12th schedule, but that is indicative. They don't get automatically power to make laws on those subjects. So there is a step involved. State governments will devolve powers to panchayats, and state governments have not devolved powers to panchayats. In legal domain, hardly there is any devolution. Administrative, no devolution. Devolution is not there, then what are you talking about decentralization? Fine. So only political decentralization has happened, in the sense there are elections, political representatives are chosen, and this machinery is there. Rest is not there. Can panchayats deliver in India without funds, functions, functionaries? Fine. So 73rd Amendment Act is a revolutionary step or a tragedy. Tragedy, farce, a conspiracy against panchayats. Fine. So the idea is, those who favor panchayats, they should get convinced that panchayats cannot do any good. They are useless institutions. Fine. So you will not give them power so that they can function. So, but you will put blame that panchayats are useless. This will strengthen that people will feel panchayats are useless, state governments are useless. Only that matters is union government. Fine. So here there is no decentralization that has happened as envisaged by Gandhi. Fine. So it is a very anemic tragedy. Like Karl Marx said that history repeats, first as a tragedy, second as a farce. So that essay has also come. You could have given example of Panchayati Raj experiment in India. Fine. So first Balwant Rai Mehta committee based recommendation, that was also useless Panchayati Raj. And then 73rd Amendment Act, another useless Panchayati Raj. So this proves Marx right. पहले तो ट्रेजेडी था, अब ये फार्स है, इसीलिए पंचायत्स का कोई भविष्य नहीं. ठीक है, बेकार है. सो can you differentiate between unitary and federal? So in unitary systems, the provincial governments or subnational governments have either delegated or devolved powers, whereas in federation they have original powers. What are original powers? Which are not devolved powers. Fine. So what is the source of original powers? Constitution. Same, which is the source of the union's power. Fine. तो you know devolution, decentralization, federation. ठीक है. अब एक और लिखो. How to, या ऐसे लिखो. How to differentiate between unitary and confederal. अब लिखो, they are opposite to each other. अब लिखो, in unitary system, center gives power to the states. ठीक है. अब लिखो, in confederation, states give power to center. Or you can say units create center. ठीक है. First example लिखो. First example of confederation. Right. 13 colonies came together to form federal government, to form central government in USA in 1776. So which was weak? Center. And it was so weak that it could not manage. So gradually strong. Fine. So USA was originally confederation. Fine. And so here units form the center, and here center forms the unit. ठीक है. You can, if you find USA confusing, you can put SARC, you can put EU. Is this clear? Now, right, what is the difference in federation and confederation? Difference in federation and confederation. कॉन्फेडरेशन में अंडरलाइन करके लिखो, डिस्ट्रक्टिबल यूनियन. कॉन्फेडरेशन इज अ डिस्ट्रक्टिबल यूनियन. मीन्स units can withdraw anytime. For example, India can withdraw from SARC. It is a destructible union. And federation? Federation is indestructible union. अब एक क्वेश्चन लिखो, who gave this definition? Right, US Supreme Court. At the time of Civil War. when southern states wanted to come out of the union, ठीक है. तो Supreme Court of US said that US is not confederation, US is a federation, and federation means indestructible union. Fine. So when we say indestructible union, what does that mean? Okay, इसका मतलब और लिखो. Indestructible union means units cannot go out. Units cannot go out means units do not have external sovereignty. They don't have external sovereignty means no power to conduct foreign policy of their choice. Can Kashmir have its own independent foreign policy? No. ठीक है. तो इसका मतलब क्या है? अब एक और ऐसे समझो, लिखो राइट इन, ऐसे नेक्स्ट फर्स्ट पॉइंट लिखो, इन यूनिटरी सिस्टम units neither have internal sovereignty nor external. Next लिखो, in federation units have which sovereignty? Internal, but not external. Or in confederation units have both. Units have both. So what was former USSR? Confederation. That is why the units were allowed to come out. And USSR was confederation. That is why the units were allowed to conduct a foreign policy, at least theoretically. So even before the disintegration of USSR, India had the diplomatic offices in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, etc. Means we had independent relations also with these countries. Fine, but it was all theoretical thing. Yeah. Yes.
Like EU holds the same power as USSR did.
Yes, but EU has formalized the process of coming out by Article 50 of Lisbon Treaty. तो अब यूएसएसआर के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ऐसा कुछ फॉर्मल क्लॉज नहीं है, लेकिन एक ही बात है, कॉन्फेडरेशन और मतलब ईयू और यूएसएसआर. लेकिन यूएसएसआर क्या था? टोटलिटेरियन था, डेमोक्रेटिक नहीं था. लेकिन टेक्निकल तो वो कॉन्फेडरेशन ही था. Now, let's say forms of governments. Forms of governments. फॉर्म्स ऑफ गवर्नमेंट्स में फर्स्ट, राइट, पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम. Parliamentary system is based on fusion of powers. Fusion of powers. Fusion of powers means executive is a part of legislature. Means they are not two independent entities. So in a parliamentary system, who has more power? Legislature or executive? लेजिस्लेचर. तुम लोग ऐसी प्रैक्टिस करो जल्दी जल्दी आंसर देने की, चाहे सही हो चाहे गलत हो, इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं, सोचना मत. तुम कम से कम ये तो सोचो मैम ऐसा क्वेश्चन पूछेंगी ही क्यों जो हमें आता होगा, है ना. हम ऐसा क्वेश्चन क्यों पूछेंगे जिसमें ट्विस्ट नहीं होगा. ठीक है. तो तुम्हें लग रहा था लेजिस्लेचर, तो तुम्हें अपने पे विश्वास नहीं करना था और ये मानना था कि जो मुझे लग रहा है वो तो हो ही नहीं सकता है, वरना मैम क्वेश्चन ही क्यों पूछेंगी. ठीक है. तो या तो तुम अपने को नहीं समझे या हमें नहीं समझे, ये बड़ी दिक्कत की बात है भाई. इन पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम एग्जीक्यूटिव हैज पावर because executive controls legislature, not legislature controls, because executive has majority. Fine. So strong executive means parliamentary system. Weakest executive means presidential system. ठीक है. यूएस प्रेसिडेंट की सैलरी भी नहीं जा पाएगी. तो विच इज द स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट इंस्टीट्यूशन इन यूएसए? सेनेट, कांग्रेस, नॉट प्रेसिडेंट. ठीक है. यही तो पैराडॉक्स है. कहने के लिए यूएस प्रेसिडेंट को आप कहते हैं रियल एग्जीक्यूटिव, तो एग्जीक्यूटिव है. एग्जीक्यूटिव का काम क्या है? एग्जीक्यूशन करना, दिमाग नहीं लगाना है, एग्जीक्यूशन करना है. ठीक है. तो रियल एग्जीक्यूटिव का मतलब ये नहीं है प्रेसिडेंट इज पावरफुल. President is not powerful, but they have manipulated, in the sense acquired lot of emergency powers, etc. Is that clear? तो parliamentary system जैसे strongest elected head is prime minister in a parliamentary system. See, in US, when US constitution was formed, hardly the constitution makers of US were students of law. Right? So they were philosophers or they were businessmen or military persons. But when Indian constitution was formed, it was formed by the lawyers. Right? So lawyers know भाई नेहरू कौन थे, उन्हें पता था ना मजे किसमें है ना. मजा जो नेहरू कभी नहीं मानते प्रेसिडेंशियल सिस्टम, क्योंकि इन प्रेसिडेंशियल सिस्टम एग्जीक्यूटिव इज नॉट कंट्रोलिंग द पर्स. व्हाई डू यू गेट इन पॉलिटिक्स? पॉलिटिक्स गए पर्स नहीं हाथ में, तो मतलब क्या करोगे? हैव यू अंडरस्टूड दिस? सो executive is powerful in parliamentary system. ठीक है. चलो अब presidential system. Presidential system is based on separation of powers between executive and legislature. In India, there is no separation of power. Can in India anyone be a minister without being member of parliament beyond 6 months? Why you need that person should be a member of parliament? Because we have parliamentary system. Is this clear? Okay. And in US, can any member of Senate be a part of executive? No, separation of powers. Fine. Now, next is semi-presidential system. Semi-presidential system I will discuss later when we will discuss French system. So semi-presidential, time being के लिए एग्जाम्पल लिखो फ्रांस, अब लिखो इन फ्रांस there was a problem of political instability. Underline करो instability. देखो instability is feature of parliamentary system. अब लिखो hence to address instability and to bring stability, some elements of presidential system were added. Hence, it is called hybrid system. इसको बाद में वरना नेसेसरली रेपिटेशन होगा. यहाँ पे एक टर्म लिखो कोहैबिटेशन. प्रीलिम्स में कभी आ जाए, ये कहाँ का टर्म है? कोहैबिटेशन. ठीक है, तो कोहैबिटेशन थोड़ा एक नेगेटिव टर्म होता है. कोहैबिटेशन अभी बस इतना लिखो, व्हेन प्रेसिडेंट एंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर are from different political parties. So in France sometimes cohabitation happens and then the French system does not work smoothly. तो उसको cohabitation कहते हैं. Cohabitation happens in India. Yes, fine. For example, Pranab Mukherjee as a president and Prime Minister Modi, then the system will not work in a smooth manner. Again, when APJ Abdul Kalam and Manmohan Singh and APJ Abdul Kalam used pocket veto on Office of Profit Bill, fine. So those scenarios are not good scenarios for the smooth functioning. So this is called cohabitation. Now you know the majorities, fine. Yes. सेनेट मना कर सकता है, लेकिन एक कन्वेंशन डेवलप हो गया, उसको कहते हैं सेनेटोरियल कर्टसी. तो कर्टसी के चलते मना नहीं किया जा सकता, लेकिन कर तो सकते हैं. अगर प्रेसिडेंट कोई ट्रीटी करता है तो जब तक सेनेट उसे रेटिफाई नहीं करती तो उसका कोई लीगल बेसिस नहीं होता है। इसलिए अल्टीमेट पावर्स किसके पास है? क्यों है? क्योंकि यूनियन इज क्रिएटेड बाय स्टेट्स, सेनेट इज अ रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफ स्टेट, तो स्टेट ने सारी पावर्स अपने पास रखी हैं, इसलिए सेनेट इज मोस्ट पावरफुल देयर। कौन? हाँ, प्रेसिडेंट इज नॉट चूजन डायरेक्टली, प्रेसिडेंट इज चूजन बाय इलेक्टोरल कॉलेज। और अमेरिकन सिस्टम बहुत अलग है, पीपुल का रिप्रेजेंटेटिव नहीं है वो, ठीक है। तुम्हें लगता है अमेरिकन पब्लिक ऐसी पागल है चूज करती बैठेगी ट्रम्प टाइप लोगों को, ये ना। चलो एनीवे, वो तो इलेक्टोरल कॉलेज से होता है, अभी समझेंगे। फिलहाल एब्सोल्यूट मेजॉरिटी मीन्स 50% of the total strength. Effective majority, the then members, ऐसे लिखो effective majority. Effective majority means 50% of effective strength. Effective strength means total seats minus vacancies. So for removal of vice president or for removal of speaker, you require effective strength. Right? Now, what is simple majority? Present and voting. देखो, what is simple majority? Present and voting का क्या? What is simple majority का definition लिखो. लिखो, which is not effective or special or absolute. जो ये नहीं है वो बाकी जो है वो सिंपल है। जैसे what is ordinary law, ठीक है, which is not amendment. Ordinary bill is not that which is passed by simple majority, because amendments are also passed by simple majority. So ordinary bill is which is not amendment bill. Similarly, what is simple majority? Which is not special, not effective and not absolute. Exclude करके definition दी जाती है, ठीक है। तो this is simple majority's definition. And we have different type of special majorities. 2/3 of the members present and voting and 2/3 of the strength of the house. So we will discuss when we'll do the other. Now, another concept is, let us understand rule of law. What does rule of law means? एक और लिखो, क्वेश्चन लिखो, रूल ऑफ लॉ इज अ फीचर ऑफ विच कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन? लिखो, ओरिजिनली rule of law comes from Britain. ठीक है, तो अंडरलाइन करो रूल ऑफ लॉ, लिखो व्हाट डज दिस इंडिकेट? लिखो, लिमिटेशंस ऑन powers of executive. ठीक है, means executive in Britain cannot act in an arbitrary manner. ब्रिटेन में रूल ऑफ लॉ सिर्फ एग्जीक्यूटिव के लिए है क्योंकि दे हैव पार्लियामेंट्री सॉवरेनिटी. ठीक है, तो एग्जीक्यूटिव कैन नॉट एक्ट इन अ आर्बिट्ररी मैनर. ठीक है, अब एक क्वेश्चन लिखो. लिखो, हु एक्सप्लेन्ड दैट ब्रिटेन हैज रूल ऑफ लॉ. And next is why this question arose. To who explained, right? A.V. Dicey. A.V. Dicey explained. कुछ लोग सोचते हैं एवी डाइसी ने रूल ऑफ लॉ दिया. नहीं, उसने बताया कि ब्रिटेन में रूल ऑफ लॉ है. ठीक है, तो एवी डाइसी हैज एक्सप्लेन्ड. अब लिखो, ही हैड टू एक्सप्लेन बिकॉज देयर वॉज confusion as Britain didn't have या do not have written constitution. Do not have written constitution. अब लिखो, according to Dicey, if Britain does not have written constitution, it does not mean executive is free to do anything. It is not free to do anything. ठीक है, अब लिखो, what puts check on the government in Britain? What limits the powers of government in Britain? इसको समझने से पहले एक लिखो, एक और क्वेश्चन लिखो. What limits the powers of government in India and USA? क्या लिमिट करता है? लिखो, फंडामेंटल राइट्स. So people in Britain have fundamental rights. No. अरे भाई, हम क्वेश्चन इसीलिए तो पूछ रहे हैं कि जो तुम्हारा एजम्पशन है उसको तुम क्वेश्चन करो. So people in Britain have fundamental rights? No, because there is no fundamental law. कोई fundamental rights नहीं है. लिखो पहले क्वेश्चन लिखो, whether people in Britain have fundamental rights. Answer is no, because there is no fundamental law. अब एक क्वेश्चन लिखो, डज दैट मीन people in Britain have no rights? Answer is no, they do have rights, but the source is customs. Oblique customary laws. तो रूल ऑफ लॉ का मतलब ये होता है, ऑप्शंस दे सकते हैं कि वेदर फंडामेंटल राइट्स एस्टैब्लिश रूल ऑफ लॉ, फंडामेंटल राइट्स एस्टैब्लिश रूल ऑफ लॉ, यस, वेदर राइट्स एस्टैब्लिश रूल ऑफ लॉ, एक क्वेश्चन लिखो, लिखो वेदर राइट्स आर एसेंशियल टू इंश्योर रूल ऑफ लॉ। क्या लगता है? यस, राइट्स ही तो एस्टैब्लिश करते हैं रूल ऑफ लॉ, क्योंकि राइट्स लिमिट करते हैं पावर। ठीक है, राइट्स इंश्योर रूल ऑफ लॉ। तो इन ब्रिटेन people do not have fundamental rights, then how rule of law is ensured? If not fundamental rights, then customary rights. So there was a question mark whether Britain has a rule of law or not. So Dicey said yes, but in Britain conventions is a source of right, customs is a source of right. Fine. So where there is a right, there is a rule of law. There cannot be rule of law where there is no right. Fine. So rights is there only in democracy. Fine. So rule of law is only in democracy. Opposite of democracy is what? Authoritarianism, where there will be no rights. तो ये याद रहेगा, rights are essential, है ना? ठीक है, तो अब इसी में लिखो, डाइसी हेल्ड दैट देयर आर three features of rule of law in Britain. Three features of rule of law in Britain. ठीक है, और लिखो इसका सोर्स क्या है। सोर्स है customs. Then what is a custom? Who tells? Judiciary. ठीक है, अब लिखो which institution interprets the customary rights? Answer is judiciary. अब ये सेंटेंस सही है, इन डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्रीज जुडिशियरी इज द कस्टोडियन ऑफ रूल ऑफ लॉ। फाइन, जुडिशियरी एग्जिस्ट फॉर रूल ऑफ लॉ। क्या ये सेंटेंस सही है? द पर्पस ऑफ जुडिशियल रिव्यू इज टू इंश्योर रूल ऑफ लॉ। ठीक है, देन इन अथॉरिटी, ये सेंटेंस सही है, इन अथॉरिटेरियन स्टेट्स जुडिशियरी एग्जिस्ट but rule of law may not exist. फाइन, तो ये है, जैसे रूल ऑफ लॉ डेमोक्रेसी का फंक्शन है, तो फिलहाल उसने तीन फीचर्स बताए कि ब्रिटेन में रूल ऑफ लॉ है। पहला है पहला है एब्सेंस ऑफ आर्बिट्ररी पावर्स। सेकंड है इक्वालिटी बिफोर लॉ। इक्वलिटी बिफोर लॉ का मतलब क्या होता है? इक्वलिटी बिफोर का लॉ का मतलब होता है, राइट, आर्बिट्ररीनेस इज नॉट परमिटेड। ये सब फंडामेंटल राइट्स टॉपिक में क्लियर होगा। अभी चूंकि रिपीटिशन होगा इसलिए मैं ज्यादा नहीं करूँ। फंडामेंट इक्वलिटी बिफोर लॉ का मतलब हुआ, जैसे आर्टिकल 14 does not allow arbitrary classification, it allows reasonable classification, ठीक है, लेकिन वहां पे ही क्लियर करेंगे। और थर्ड है रिकॉग्निशन ऑफ द राइट्स ऑफ इंडिविजुअल्स, रिकॉग्निशन ऑफ राइट्स ऑफ इंडिविजुअल। तो अब इसमें प्रीलिम्स में हो सकता है कि इक्वालिटी बिफोर लॉ इज द सेकेंड प्रिंसिपल गिवन बाय डाइसी, है ना। सो दैट्स ऑल फॉर टुडे। आपको वो एक ऑब्जेक्टिव टाइप और ये मिला था, कल लेके आना, ठीक है। चलो, हाँ